Okay, so on number 4, we've got this negative 5x. Okay, we've got this negative 5x. We're going to set that equal to 0. We've got this x minus 1 squared. We're going to set that equal to 0. And then we got x plus 1 cubed. We're going to set that equal to 0. So now we're going to solve for each of these. So we're going to divide by negative 5 on both sides on this one. So that'll give us x equals 0. Okay. And that has a multiplicity of 1. Okay, there is a 1 right here. So that will have a multiplicity of 1, and that would be a cross. Okay. For this one right here, in order to get rid of that squared, you're going to take the square root. So that's going to give you x1 to both sides, and you're going to get x equals 1. So the multiplicity for 1 is 2, which is a bounce. And so that's going to be x plus 1 equals 0. You're going to subtract 1 from both sides, and that's going to give you x equals negative 1. The multiplicity for that one is 3, and that's going to be a wiggle. Now, what is the sign of the leading coefficient? That's negative, because there's this negative chilling out front. The degree, you're going to add all of these up. So you've got 1, 2, and 3. And then it's asking about right in behavior and left in behavior. So going back to like our chart that I told you to write down at the very, very beginning, it's going to look like, sorry, I think I copied the wrong one. Yeah. Okay, so going to our chart back in the very beginning, if it was positive and even, then it looked like this. If it was negative and even, then it looked like this. So what is it going to look like? This one. So it's going to have a left in behavior of negative, right in behavior of negative. Okay? So now what we're going to do is we're going to actually graph it. So at x equals negative 1, there's going to be a wiggle. Okay, so it's going to start down at the bottom because we know it's facing downwards. And it's going to wiggle through x equals 1. And then it's going to cross at x equals 0. And then it's going to bounce at x equals 1. Okay, and again, this is going to be a rough sketch because, like, I'm not Picasso, but I am, but I'm not. So if I go into my graphing calculator and I hit y equals and I type the original function in, oops, x plus 1 raised to the third power, and I graph that, look, my graph looks almost, for people who are online, my graph looks almost identical to my awesome drawing of Doom, right? Like, these are very, very similar. Maybe a little off, but again, we're just sketching. Okay? Alright, so on the next one, I'm going to erase all of this madness really quick. Yes, no, maybe. Alright, so now on the next one, what you're going to do is that same process. So you got negative 5x squared equals 0. You got x plus 1 raised to the third equals 0. And x minus 1 squared equals 0. And then you're going to solve. So and subtract 1 from both sides. x equals -1. So x equals 1. So now we're going to do the multiplicity. So when x equals 0, that had a multiplicity of 2. And that's a bounce. X equals -1. That had a multiplicity of 3. Oh, I'm sorry. This needs to go all down. So sorry, so sorry. Oh, multiplicity of 2, bounce. Multiplicity of 3, wiggle. And multiplicity of 1, and that's going to be a cross. Okay. So the sign of the leading coefficient, again, it's that leading term, which is going to be negative. And our degree is going to be 2 plus 3 plus 2, because I'm pulling those exponents. And so that's 2 plus 3, which is 5. 5 plus 2 is 7. So that's going to be an odd negative. And remember, from our in behavior, what does our in behavior look like for that one? Go back to your chart and figure out what your in behavior is going to look like, and then try to go ahead and look at what the graph is going to look like. Go ahead and try to graph that one.
I'm trying to explain this to him. I don't know where this stuff is number from. 1250? Yeah. Do you see? 5 cubed is only 125.
And so they got 0 minus 0 plus 10. So 10 times 125 is how they got 120.
Yeah. Order of operations on that one.
Thank you.
No problem. All right, so now we're going to actually draw this out. But how is my in behavior going to look? What does it say for odd and negative? Go back to your chart that I told you, hey, write this down. So going back to this chart right here, odd and negative, it's going to look like this. Bottom left or bottom right hand corner. So it's going to look like that, right? So that means that left in behavior is going to be negative, positive infinity. Right in behavior is going to be negative infinity. All right, so now I'm actually going to like graph these parts. So we're going to start up here. We're going to cross. And then we're going to bounce. And then we're going to wiggle. Oh, sorry. We're going to cross, bounce, wiggle. And it might look a little bit more swoopy when you actually graph it. So let's actually look at what the real graph looks like. And I would normally use my graphing calculator and not even have to like memorize this stuff, but on like the SAT or on like a quick question about like, I don't know. I mean, if they asked you to graph it and you don't have a graphing calculator, this is what you would have to do. Okay, so we've got negative 5x squared. And then we've got x plus 1 cubed. And then we've got x minus 1 squared. And then we're going to hit graph. So my people who are online, it's going to look like this, which is roughly what I have. Again, a little different just because that's a more accurate graph. And if it actually asks you to graph it like accurately, okay, fine, plug in a bunch of numbers and go from there. But nobody got time for that. Find the sketch, okay? All right, so questions on that? Solid. There is a Desmos activity. I would like for you to try to complete that by Friday. Okay, I think it's like 8-ish slides. So I would like for you to complete that by Friday. If you want to do it tonight, that's fine. If not, okay. You got Friday to do it. or by Friday to do it. So I'm gonna okay. Oop, go back. Okay. So you're working on that Desmos activity that's at the bottom of that page. For those of you who are still writing, sorry. All right. So I will see you tomorrow. Make sure you try that Desmos activity. It shouldn't take you very long. It's about in behavior. All right, bye y'all.